Hey guys, Danny Johnson here. Today I'm going to be installing these BILSTEIN shocks onto my 2000 Chevy Silverado. Okay, so I've just lifted the truck and I put it on jack stands, and they're as even as I can get, and they're secure on there. So it's really not that high off the ground that it needs to get. Okay, so once the truck is in the air and properly on jack stands, you can come and take your floor jack and lift up underneath on this little stud there to slightly compress this arm. And you just want to have that flexibility to go up and down when removing this, because when it's all the way down there's too much tension on the old shock absorber, and if it's too much compressed then you'll have problems too. So you just want to be able to go up and down with it. So what you want to do is come up in here and you'll see the stud up there with the bolt on the end of it. And that stud will spin, so you want to get some locking pliers and put them on the top of the stud and lock it into place. But first, you're going to want to put your wrench down over the stud and onto that nut. Now this nut is a different size than the replacement one, so just be careful of that. It's not all the same size. So if you can see in here, I have those locking pliers locked onto that stud. And so as I turn this ratcheting wrench, which these come in handy quite a bit, the pliers will then hit that exhaust manifold, and the little nut here will spin, and we don't have that stud spinning around. So we'll just go ahead and loosen this all the way up. Also, you can usually put a wrench on the top of the shock absorber here and then continue to ratchet up top if you can't fit vice grips up in there. And do be careful if you put grips up in here. You don't want to hit any of these brake lines or anything else that's running through here, so just be careful of that. But yeah, sometimes you can get a wrench on here on the top of this as you start to remove it. So as you undo it, the old shock absorber may start to drop down a little bit here, and that's why we also have some pressure underneath the floor jack, but we can also let the floor jack down as needed. But you'll get to the point where you can just take this old nut right off. So now you'll just want to let the floor jack almost all the way down, just so there's barely any pressure on this. And then you're going to want to come in and locate these two bolts on each side of the shock absorber. And so the perfect size is a 13/16, at least on this one, and sometimes they change the hardware size. But what you want to do is put another 13/16 or 22 millimeter if you have one on the other side and attach that to a breaker bar. I don't know if you can see that, but I have a breaker bar coming up through here to hold that side in place. And then I'm going to break this side loose, and either using another big wrench or an impact. But you just want to rotate one of these counterclockwise, and you want to make sure that you do not tear your CV boot, or whatever you'd call it, in the process. Okay, so that one came right out. Once again, I was holding the other side as well. So the nut came off, and now we can slide the bolt out of here. And there's not a lot of tension on this, which is great. You can feel that. So then you want to just slide this bad boy right back out of there. And if it's a bad shock absorber, it won't be hard to compress. Now you want to take note of the bushing setup here. And this one comes apart into two pieces. I'll take the top part out now too. These ones kind of interlock, and I don't believe the new ones do. I think they actually just have a rubber piece on the bottom and one on the top. Just to show you how bad these are, these new ones you shouldn't really even be able to compress or take apart by yourself. The old one here, I could very easily just move it. So those are completely shot. now we're just building the new shock absorber here. So we put on our metal piece, then our other rubber one here with the tip part of it pointing upward. So we'll put that into the truck now. Then we'll slide this over the top part, and it's just the opposite, just like that. Okay, so I just slid the bottom of the shock absorber back on and then fed it up through that hole. And we're going to go ahead and put our bolt through here now and put a little bit of Loctite on the old hardware and tighten this back up. So pretty simple here. Just thread the old hardware back through there and then put the nut on the other side. So I just put a thin stripe of Loctite on there, and I used red, and I'm just not using a lot of it. You could use blue if you want. Then just go ahead and start threading it back onto the stud. So just the opposite of removal, we put our socket back on this side, and now we're just tightening this one, holding this one still as it torques it down. Okay, so now coming up here, you'll notice that the threads are barely sticking out here, and it's not seated yet. So we're going to go ahead and put our other bushing up on top with its metal piece there, and with that there, now there's really no threads showing through at all. So we're going to start to jack our wheel back up and make sure that this seats properly. Okay, so once those are touching and kind of nice and snug together, we'll go ahead and put our lock washer on the top. So here we are putting our lock washer on. You put the flat side of it on the bottom so that it's pointed upwards to a point. You understand what I'm saying? It has the little rounded part at the top, and it'll start to get pretty tight. So that's when we're going to have to go back to using our wrench. Okay, so we have our channel locks on there again to lock the top of that nut, and now we just have our wrench. In this case now it's a 17 millimeter, and we're just tightening this down as tight as we can get it. Okay, so once these are nice and tight, you don't want to go over tight, but I'd say a good rule of thumb is if it's the same width as that silver piece, then you're probably still okay if you've smashed it down that far. I'm going to go ahead and release these locks, and we're going to remove our wrench, and now we're pretty much done with this side. We're just going to put the wheel back on and do the other side. Just make sure you always do these in pairs, because if you have a good shock absorber on one side and a bad on the other, you'll be harder to control the vehicle. So we'll go ahead and move on to the other side. Okay, then just go through and make sure that all these bolts are tight, everything's good. Then go ahead and reinstall the wheel, and then hand thread the lug nuts on, and then torque them to about 95 to 110 foot-pounds. So once you've tightened everything as much as you can by hand while the wheel's still up in the air, then lift the truck up, hold the jack stand. You want to let it down until it's just barely touching the ground. There you go. So now it just has just enough force to keep that wheel from spinning, and then torque them to 100, 115 foot-pounds using the star pattern. So going across from each lug nut. You could go around a few times just for good measure. Now if you have this factory style wheel, the hubcap just has fake lug nuts that go over each of the real lug nuts. So you just put it on and then you just turn those until they lock onto the lug nut. Maybe it's a full turn or so. Just don't go very tight with these because you don't want to break them. And your front shocks are now done.